Turn off every light in the room. Turn off the fan. Put your phone face down and mute every notification. Now just sit there. 10 seconds in, it's peaceful. 2 minutes in, something changes. The silence stops feeling empty. It starts to feel loud. That's not your imagination. It's not anxiety. Something measurable is happening inside your skull right now, and it has nothing to do with your mood. For almost all of human history, this situation never came up. You were never actually silent. Wind moved through something. Insects clicked. Footsteps landed somewhere nearby. There was always a floor of sound underneath everything else. Total silence, the kind you can manufacture by shutting a door and turning off a device, is a modern invention. Your brain was never built to sit inside one. So what's actually happening in there? Let's start with the room built to answer that exact question. In 1953, two researchers named Heller and Bergman brought ordinary people, all with healthy hearing, into an anechoic chamber. That's a room engineered to absorb almost every sound wave that touches its walls, so close to true silence that it's about as quiet as a room can physically get. They asked their subjects to simply sit and listen. 95% of them reported hearing something anyway. A ringing, a hiss, a thin, high whine that never stopped. There was no source for any of it. The room was, by every instrument in the building, silent. Later teams tried to repeat the experiment under stricter conditions, worried the first result was a fluke. The numbers dropped, but never to zero. Depending on the study, somewhere between 60 and 80% of people still heard a sound that wasn't there. In other words, absolute silence doesn't really exist, at least not for your brain. When the outside world goes quiet, your brain fills the gap itself. But why would it do that? Why not just stay quiet? This is where it gets interesting. Your auditory system isn't a passive microphone sitting there waiting for input. It's constantly adjusting its own sensitivity, the same way your eyes widen in a dark room to pull in more light. Researchers studying this adjustment found something striking. When people wore earplugs for just 1 week, cutting off ordinary background sound, their brains responded by turning the volume up internally. Loudness perception increased within days. Brain scans showed a measurable rise in something called central gain, essentially an internal amplifier running in the brainstem and auditory cortex. Take sound away, and your nervous system compensates by manufacturing more sensitivity, whether or not there's anything out there worth hearing. So the longer you sit in silence, the harder your brain works to find something in it. And when it can't find anything real, it starts hearing things that aren't. There's a second layer to this, and it's just as strange. Silence doesn't just get amplified. It gets filled in on purpose. Brain imaging researchers have found that your auditory cortex, the part of your brain that processes sound, can switch on during total silence with no sound present at all, simply because you're expecting a sound to happen or imagining one. Play someone a familiar song and cut the audio for a beat, and their brain lights up in that gap as if the missing note were still playing. Your brain doesn't just wait for silence to end. It rehearses what should be there, and sometimes it can't tell the difference between the rehearsal and the real thing. That's the mechanism. But the mechanism has a reason behind it, and the reason is a lot older than you are. In 2020, a team of neuroscientists studying rats found something strange. When one rat froze in fear, the sudden absence of its normal rustling and movement was enough to make nearby rats freeze too. Not a warning call, not a scent, just the sound of nothing where there should have been something. The researchers traced this reaction to a specific neural circuit, one built to treat a sudden drop in expected sound as a danger signal in its own right. This isn't unique to rats. Across dozens of species, when the normal background hum of an environment drops out, everyone nearby goes on alert. Birds stop singing the moment a predator moves through their territory, and they stay quiet for up to an hour afterward, long after the danger has actually passed. In the wild, silence rarely means safety. It usually means something stopped moving, and the thing most likely to make an entire forest go quiet all at once is a predator working its way through. Your ancestors inherited that same wiring. For nearly the entire span of human existence, a sudden drop into total quiet wasn't peaceful. It was a signal to pay attention, because whatever silenced the birds might be coming for you next. Think about how specific that wiring had to be to survive this long. A brain that ignored silence would miss the exact moment danger arrived. A brain that panicked at every quiet second would burn out from exhaustion long before it ever met a real threat. What you inherited instead is a system tuned right in between, calm during ordinary quiet, but ready to snap into high alert the instant that quiet feels different from the usual background hush. The problem is, that system can't tell the difference between a predator in the dark and an empty bedroom with the lights off. Both register the same way. Quiet that shouldn't be quiet, which brings us to the strangest data point of all. In 2004, an acoustics lab in Minnesota built what was, at the time, the quietest room ever measured on the planet. It registered at -9 decibels, below the threshold of human hearing itself. People were invited to sit inside, alone. In the dark, almost nobody stayed long. The longest anyone reportedly lasted was 45 minutes. Past a certain point, visitors reported hearing their own heartbeat, their own blood moving, their own lungs working, magnified until it stopped feeling calming and started feeling like too much information at once. Take away every external sound, and your body doesn't go quiet along with it. It gets louder to you, one organ at a time, until you're the only source of noise left in the room. So here's the reframe. You might assume a brain that manufactures sound out of nothing is malfunctioning. It isn't. It's doing exactly what it evolved to do. An animal that stops monitoring its surroundings the moment things go quiet is an animal that gets caught off guard. Given the choice, your nervous system would rather raise a false alarm than miss a real one. The ringing in an anechoic chamber, the racing thoughts at 2 in the morning, the strange sense that a silent house feels louder than a noisy one, all of it is the same ancient alarm system, still fully wired, with almost nothing left in the modern world to actually guard against. Here's the part that actually applies to you. You are almost never in real silence. Right now, somewhere close by, there's a hum, a fridge, traffic outside, air moving through a vent you've stopped noticing. Your brain has learned to filter almost all of it out, treating it as background you don't need to think about. That's not laziness. That's efficiency. A brain that reacted to every hum in the house would never get anything else done. But the rare moments you do get real quiet, late at night, alone, phone finally off, that's exactly when the system that's been idling your whole life switches back on. It starts scanning. It starts amplifying. And because there's nothing left in your bedroom worth being afraid of, all that leftover vigilance turns inward instead and starts listening to you. Your own heartbeat, your own thoughts, every worry you managed to outrun during a loud, distracted day, suddenly audible, because the system built to catch a predator in the dark has nothing left to catch except you. This is probably why so many people say they can't sleep in a silent house but sleep fine with a fan running or a podcast playing low in the background. It isn't a preference, It's a workaround. A steady, predictable hum gives that ancient alarm system something to lock onto and dismiss as safe, so it can finally stand down instead of scanning an empty room all night looking for a threat that was never going to arrive. So go back to that room. Lights off, fan off, phone face down. Sit there again, except now you know what's actually happening while you do. That rising hum isn't the silence getting louder. It's a few 100,000 years of listening for a predator that stopped showing up a long time ago. Still standing guard, still refusing to stand down, still doing its job in a world that quietly stopped needing.